Welcome to Pop-O-Holics, the show about hot takes hotter than hot, tasty pancakes. Welcome to the show that you know that's all about pop culture. I'm your host, Christian Katie, and I'm joined as always by my two bestest of buds.
Chris Conkling.
And Brian Dupree.
There's two best buds that are very flexible and are working really well with me while I go through the trials and tribulations of having a fiance who has COVID and then also a baby, which has messed up recording. But it's great because we got some time to put together a really great show for you all. So I'm very excited to bring it to you. This is the weekly upload, the Pop-O-Holics weekly feed into all things pop culture. We talk about the latest news and all of those things, what we've been consuming. We have some community feedback, and we wrap things up. And we got a lot of news to get to, so we're going to start things right off the way that we always do, which is with Brian's Wacky News Corner.
Start on wacky, start on wacky. Welcome back, everyone. So for those of you who are very in touch with the Quentin Tarantino news, you may have heard about this. He did a round of a bunch of podcasts within the last year or so promoting his most recent novel, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. He also has another one that just got announced release date, a book about Hollywood history called Cinema Speculation that I'm super excited about. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was amazing. I'm a big fan of the movie and the novel, very different experiences. And it's just been formally announced that he and Roger Avary, who was a co-writer of Pulp Fiction with him, who they met and possibly helped found from something that from the trailer I was listening to, a video rental store called Video Archives. So they're starting a podcast called the Video Archives Podcast, where they review movies only within this collection that Quentin Tarantino now bought and owns inside of his home. So I don't know about you guys, but I could pretty much listen to Quentin Tarantino talk about movies indefinitely. He is a ridiculous encyclopedic wealth of cinema knowledge and is just infinitely excitable about it and makes me excited about watching movies. Even things that some sorts of movies people would consider like B movies and things. So I'm super excited for this podcast. The trailer sounded pretty good, and I listened to probably 6 or 8 hours of him on podcasts within the last 6 months, and I'm ready for more. So this is going to be coming out July 19th. I'm super excited about it. How do you guys feel about the Video Archives podcast?
I can't wait for it as well, Brian. It sounds so cool, especially for cinephiles. Like you mentioned, he is just an encyclopedia of Hollywood history and film knowledge. And I've mentioned a couple times on this podcast, regardless of what the subject matter is, I always really enjoy listening to passionate people talk about what they're passionate about. Just so happens this time around, I too am passionate about the subject matter, but there is something contagious about someone like Quentin Tarantino and how, like you said, excitable they are when it comes to the things that they truly love and absorb. And I think listening to Tarantino and Avary talk about all these and I don't want to say obscure films, because a couple of the films that they listed that they might be covering at the top of the release aren't incredibly obscure, but I'm just excited to dive into the podcast, maybe watch some movies that I also have never seen, and then listen to them talk about it. So yeah, this is going to be a ton of fun. And I think you were talking about what was the store called? Video Archives was what the store was called.
Yeah.
When they worked there. I think they popularized the store by just being themselves as employees within the store. People would go to them for recommendations in terms of what they should watch, because somebody could be like, I like this genre, and this genre. I like this actor, and this actor. And they could just be like, oh, well, you should probably watch A, B, and C, that encyclopedic knowledge really comes in handy. So I think they're perfect to make a podcast like this. and they will instantly have way more listeners than we do, despite being in like a similar genre of podcasting. But I don't care. I'll be one of those listeners from day one. So yeah, this is a very exciting announcement.
So some of the movies they will be covering that they've announced so far: Dark Star, Moonraker, Demonoid, Messenger of Death, and Piranha. So a few that I definitely heard of, a couple that I hadn't.
Same.
So yeah, probably going to be some cool finds in there. Christian, how are you feeling about this?
I'm trepidatious because I don't know what their banter sounds like together. I've never heard them talk together because Tarantino's can like go on huge rants and he's kind of a motor mouth. So I'm sure because they've been friends for so long that it'll feel supernatural and be probably the best part. But it's really like, can it be focused is really my big question for the two of them. But I'm sure they're going to be employing some good production talent that's going to help them make a clean show. Of course, our podcast is going to be is way better than this one, so you should just still stay subscribed and make
We've
sure.
got a great sound engineer, so
Yeah, absolutely.
Undeniable.
Yeah, I don't know if Tarantino can afford one as good as that, but we'll find out. It should be a pretty good show and something I'm interested, especially knowing Tarantino's just wealth of knowledge and, like you said, Chris, like B movies and stuff. Should be a lot of fun. And hearing like a legendary director just describe what he loves about movies. I love hearing people that are great at things describe why they love things. Like that's like my niche right there. That just is very exciting. So yeah, it should be really cool. Listen to it after you listen to your Monday and Wednesday episodes of Pop-O-Holics.
Yes, that's the Video Archives podcast. Moving on, we have some very recent news. PlayStation State of Play just happened, and a bunch of announcements and trailers and footage have been dropped.
I mean, at this point, we can just call them PlayStation Directs, right? Right, Chris? Can't we just call them PlayStation Directs?
This is exactly what they are.
PlayStation Direct. See, I don't even.
So Nintendo started doing...
Directs are the presentations that they hold when they announce like games
It's
that are
just
coming up and
comparable.
coming out and stuff like that.
Let me take
They're
the
same
listeners
thing.
down a brief history lesson. Is that normally what would happen was during the summer, there was this expo that happened called E3, which is pretty much dead at this point. They have canceled the last few years and it does not seem to.
Aren't they? Isn't it going on this year? Aren't they going to hold it this year?
I don't know. I don't think so. And if they are, it's a bare bones version of itself. Basically, Microsoft hasn't been a part of it for several years. PlayStation's not a part of it. Nintendo's not a part of it.
Right.
And Bethesda used to do one, but Bethesda. Yes, Bethesda is the more popular pronunciation, and probably the correct one. Chris, thank you.
I've heard it both ways.
And so. Nintendo kind of started like PlayStation already was dropping out of E3, but Nintendo was like, yeah, we're definitely not gonna be there. And then Nintendo just started doing random YouTube drops of like, here's 10 minutes of a thing. Like they did it for the VR / interactive cardboard thing. I forgot what that's called. Labo. They've done it for just Pokemon focus. They've done all these things. Breath of the Wild. And they're just like little drops and they're, anywhere from 10 to 30 minutes. And so PlayStation has adopted them but with the State of Play. And they've had indie showcases. And this one is a pretty beefy one. Brian, please continue.
Yeah, so I'm probably going to...
Now laugh at the joke. You get the joke now? They should just call it PlayStation Direct. Am I right, Brian?
Oh my gosh, that is such an obvious and hilarious reference. Probably going to be
jokes are the best when they have to be explained with 10-minute diatribes.
Honestly, hey, there was a history lesson in there, so it was informative. So
we're a mixed media podcast, so I'm hoping that it's informative.
We are
to those who aren't gamers that are adjacent and want to know.
So on that note, Final Fantasy 16 just dropped a new trailer. Christian, I know you used to be pretty big into these games. I'm not sure what point you fell off. Watching this trailer, it looks beautiful, first of all, the animation. I noticed that some of the gameplay was different than the Final Fantasy that I had played. It looked like there was some like hack and slash sort of style and maybe turn by turn as well. It was kind of unclear to me. I haven't played these games since I think 10 was the last one that I tried to get through, but these are the sorts of games that I never possibly finish.
They're beefy boys.
Yeah. They're very and difficult at times as well. But did you guys watch this trailer? Is Final Fantasy a series that you guys are excited for still these days? I know we went and saw an orchestra presentation of the Final Fantasy VII remake, which was amazing. And I mean, live orchestra, it's hard to go wrong. And with that music, I really enjoyed that, even not having played the game. But are you guys still interested in these?
Christian, I'm going to let you tackle that first.
You know, Brian, you asked, Christian, when did you fall off the Final Fantasy wagon? And the answer is really never. I've played all of them. Some of them I only played a few hours and dropped off. 15 I was very close to finishing and then didn't for, I don't know what reason. Something else came out or something. And I ended up actually just giving away my copy to someone else who wanted to play it. And I believe it's for free now on the PlayStation, if you have PlayStation Plus. But they've as you said with the combat, they've switched to a live action one. But I'm really excited about what we've seen from this one. They're kind of going back to high fantasy, a big focus on aeons, which is kind of the thing that connects all of these series, which is this like panel of gods. But like the set and setting's always different, the world's always different, which is really cool. I didn't really get into 14. I did play it a little bit, but I know a friend of the show, Danny Lopez, is a huge 14 fan. A lot of people love that online because that's constantly ongoing.
The MMOs, they're dangerous.
Yeah, they're dangerous, and I try not to get into it. I just started playing Diablo Immortal, so I'm already going down another rabbit hole there. But I'm very excited for this because they're taking a drastic turn into such a old school direction, and it feels somewhat fresh, given that the last one had a bunch of like boy band people in a Buick like cruising around. And not that that was terrible, not that I hated it, but I do kind of want to see where these developers' heads are at going back to kind of a more traditional setting. And that the Aeons just look, they've never looked so good.
Amazing.
Really
and if you listen to like the music in the trailer, they're saying the names of the Aeons. They're like Shiva, Ifrit, Bahamut. And it's,
Yes.
I'm here for it. It's great. It's awesome, to steal a phrase from Brian. So I think it looks very exciting. I was not as interested when they dropped the teaser last State of Play like a year ago. But I think it was 2 years ago. It was like teasing for the PlayStation 5 launch. This looks really cool, and I'm really hyped. And the story looks really interesting. So, Chris, what do you think? Being kind of in the similar boat to me of like dabbling in Final Fantasy for a while.
I agree with you. It looks really good. I mean, on the current gen consoles, it's going to be a beautiful game. Unlike Christian, I haven't played a new Final Fantasy game in a very long time, and it's mostly because of the time commitment these games take. Listeners of the podcast will know that both the year that Kingdom Hearts 3 came out, that was like the one game I chose to really dig into that year because of the time commitment. When Final Fantasy VII Remake came out, that was like the game that I chose to dig into. There's typically like one RPG or JRPG game that comes out every once in a while where I'm like, all right, I'm going to dedicate 70 hours to this thing, but it's the only thing that I'm going to play this year, you know? So Christian is definitely more of the video game person now on the podcast than, like say I was in college. But the game is certainly beautiful. And like Christian said, I'm really happy they're kind of going back to basics in terms of like a medieval setting, because the Final Fantasy games originated in this kind of like wizardry, mage, knight type of
more traditional
setting.
RPG setting, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, more fantasy, hence the name Final Fantasy. So I think that's really great. I'm going to watch footage of this game, but I don't think I'm going to end up picking it up just because I said the time commitment, unless Christian plays it and he's like, this is the best Final Fantasy game that has been made in a decade and a half. At that point, I'll probably end up picking it up. But yeah, the game looks phenomenal just based on the graphics.
So that's Final Fantasy 16. It's announced for a summer 2023 release date. No hard date, but should be out sometime in the middle of next year. All right. A game that I actually have history with, Resident Evil 4, a remake is coming out, and they've dropped the first trailer for that, as well as an official March 24th, 2023 release date. This one originally came out on the GameCube. I believe it was 2 discs. This is, again, I never finished this game. I think I played all of the first disc and not the second one. But I've always thought of it as one of my favorite games of all time, even not having finished, just from the story perspective as well as the gameplay. I really got into it for a period of time, which didn't happen often with these sorts of games in particular. This trailer, it looked good. I feel like it didn't give all that much in terms of gameplay necessarily. I'm not sure if this is going to be like Final Fantasy VII, where they kind of do a different take on the story. In some ways, I'm sure there's, I don't know if you guys could tell if it was just a pure update or not from this trailer. But Christian, this was a game that you played through back in the day, right?
RE4 is one of my favorite games of all time. Resident Evil 4 is up there with the GOATs, and that's why it's been ported to. Now, the most recent port was actually Quest 2, is an exclusive there. And what's interesting about this is they announced it and it said VR content will be made, so I'm interested to see if they do part of the game or just like a mode, and what like the rights and exclusivities around that's kind of interesting. But this is definitively a remake more than a remaster. They will be updating the combat system, from my understanding, and they will be messing with the story. There are scenes that happen in the trailer that aren't in the original game. So I do believe this will be significant, and they have this track record because they've remade the Resident Evil 2. And they redid a lot of systems in that game and some of the story elements. So I'm extremely excited. This was a very exciting announcement for me. Chris, what about you? I don't actually know if you are as big of an RE4 fan as any of us. Did you ever play it?
I've never played it. The only Resident Evil game that I've beaten to completion is 5. But
this might
if
be
you're saying
where
this is the best, one of the best games of all time,
Oh, yeah,
I think I might have to check it out. Even though I'm typically not a just like in film, the horror game genre isn't something I typically gravitate toward, but I do play RPGs. So
I do believe that this game, the RE4, is there's a direct line between that and like God of War, right? There's the way that game is made. It just was revolutionary at the time. I think going back and playing it, like the shooting would be very clunky because you can't walk and shoot at the same time. Historically, in that game, you have to stop and do that. So updating those things is going to be really helpful, and I think that I do. It's my personal, and a lot of people agree, best in the entire series of Resident Evil.
that's really exciting,
And it's very spooky, but very good, and memorable bosses, so good. There's this one on a boat, very awesome, very cool. Oh, there's one with this giant guy in a trench coat, and he like explodes and like turns into like a monster. Oh, so great. Very excited for this because they've been doing a lot of tender love and care to the old series, which is really cool.
So, Christian, did you play Resident Evil Village, the most recent game? Because that got announced for VR as well.
It did, and I gotta say that I'm a big VR fan. Obviously, I love RE4 specifically. Like none of the other games I'm a huge fan of, to be perfectly honest. I do think that's the best one. I did play Resident Evil 7 in PlayStation VR because it was in VR. And it was too scary to finish. It actually just stressed me. I'm a man enough to say this. Being in that first person in VR, I got through 75% of the game, and it got to a point where every time I put it on, I was just like, I felt like I was on the edge of having a heart attack. And I got to a point where I was so low on ammo, and these big, giant, like tar covered creatures took so many bullets, and I was like, I would go look at the headset and I'd go, I'm like out of bullets. And there's these big tar monsters now, and I kept looking at it and going, I can't do it because I'm so much anxiety. But it's really good, and will I be tempted to do that to myself again? Yeah, probably.
So that's Resident Evil Village is coming to VR. Okay, some smaller games that you had referenced, Christian. Stray has been announced for July 19th of this year. It's going to be available for free for certain members of PlayStation Plus membership, I guess.
Yeah, I don't have time to break down the new confusing PlayStation.
Oh, God,
but they have
what a
3
mess.
tiers, and it's available for 2 of the 3 tiers. The simple way to put it.
Okay, perfect.
Exciting.
So this will be available in some capacity from PlayStation Plus and looks absolutely gorgeous. The animation in this game is incredible, and it seems kind of just like a wander around, find kind of things to interact with, maybe little side quests here and there, but a very my sort of pace sort of game.
Brian, you're not alone. In the list that I made of things that stuck out to me about this state of play, this was the first thing I wrote down.
Yeah, okay. So
Stray looks great.
Christian shouted this out for us, so it definitely stuck out. So what did you think of Stray trailer?
It just looks like a really fun game. You're playing as a cat wearing a backpack, going around talking to people. It does look like there's some sci-fi
Not
elements
people,
as well.
Robots.
Robots.
The entire city is made up of robots that have like LCD screens on their face.
It just seems like it's going to be really unique and interesting, and I'm here for that. Christian, what about you?
Yeah, this was teased at another state of play, and it was like play as a cat. And that was
It was like a year and a half ago that they first showed
Yeah,
this.
and they said basically, you're a cat. And they showed a little bit of the sci-fi elements, but I was like, I'm not really a cat person. After watching this trailer, I'm like, you're basically trying to figure out this giant mystery of this world ran by robots from the perspective of a cat with a robot friend in a backpack. Mm-hmm. Yeah, sign me up.
Adorable.
Hard to go wrong.
And the mood and the vibe of it is just very unique. And as we'll talk about with another game, I get very excited about very good-looking games that don't involve killing a bunch of people. I do, because I think that's where a lot of innovation. Not that I don't mind the swingy swings of the swords and the shooty shoots, but I am always very excited about games that don't involve those things as the primary driver of gameplay.
Yeah, so very much on that note, another game that you had shouted out, Season, A Letter to the Future, is coming out this autumn.
Did you watch the trailer, Brian? Did you cry?
I did watch it. I did not cry.
It's a beautiful looking game, though.
It's absolutely gorgeous. And this is beautiful in a totally different way. The animation style is very unique and original. I don't know exactly how to describe it. It's kind of almost like Breath of the Wild.
It's like cell shaded.
Cell shaded. It's got more of a hand drawn animation look, 3D models, but it's got this stenciled, colored pencil look.
Yeah, definitely. So the gameplay for this is described as exploring, recording, meeting people, and unraveling the strange world around you. It takes place in a village safe from the turmoil of changing seasons, and our main character is going around and documenting the world, it seems, for posterity and showing what it looks like before this perpetual single season ends, which there is kind of this impending end maybe that's lingering over this that the game is going to presumably explore. Christian, you were going to say?
It looks like Waking Life the game, and all the characters end with winter's coming.
Great way to describe it.
So it's like Waking Life with the dread of the end of Game of Thrones, and hopefully it doesn't disappoint as much as that.
The vibe to me, kind of with the score and the look of the game and the way the characters just kind of maneuvering through the world, it seemed to me like it was kind of like the game Journey, but with more to do. You have a little more missions to complete within the game. Have Christian? I think you've played Journey, haven't you?
Journey is like a
it's like a vibe, really. You're kind of just moving in a linear path,
but it has so much to do with companionship, and I'm not sure that this game it has a multiplayer component, because Journey.
I'm talking when I say that, I mean like the vibe of the game and like the ambiance of the game feel a lot like that. Like I think it's going to be a relaxing game to play and just kind of go around the world.
No, it looked
intense.
intense. They didn't show the trailer, but I think there's zombies.
There might be. We might just not be seeing them.
No, you're right. It does look like half the gameplay trailers. The main protagonist just riding a bicycle through like open fields. It looks incredibly amazing. Kind of reminds me actually of Firewatch, which is a game that I think has a little more tension in it. It's straightforward tension, but it is a quote unquote walking simulator, as it's dubbed by the community. But very excited to play it. It looks super unique, and I'm all for gaming unique, no shooty shoots. Bring it on.
Yeah, so that's Season, A Letter to the Future. The trailer is out now, and it'll be out in autumn of this year. The only other game that I had on here, which I'm not sure you guys are into, Street Fighter 6 got a trailer.
Oh, Brian.
Yeah?
This is another game that I wrote down.
Good. Okay, awesome. This one stuck out because of seemingly new animation styles and effects. There's like paint splashes and some like movement streaks, almost like comics-ish, that's happening here in the fights. I don't know if it was just cutscenes, but it looked like there was some
some free roaming, which typically
Okay.
isn't in Street Fighter games, which intrigued me a lot. I can't wait to see more.
Same. Okay, Chris, go on, because that was I wasn't even sure if that was actual gameplay footage or not, but that was something that intrigued me about this as well. Historically, just kind of a Street Fighter.
Christian knows that historically, as you just said, Brian, I'm more of a Street Fighter person when it comes to the fighting genre than I am a Mortal Kombat person. Christian is the opposite. He prefers Mortal Kombat mechanics. So
I'm an old school Street Fighter 2 Turbo. I played that shit all the time. So I'm an old school Street Fighter fan, and I played Street Fighter Alpha. When I played those, and I just dropped off since the recent like Street Fighter 4 and Street Fighter 5. That just hasn't evolved in a way that I'm as happy with as the Mortal Kombat series has.
There haven't been a ton of changes to the mechanics, but when this trailer started playing and I saw that there was free roaming in the trailer, I was like, what game is this? It's made by Capcom. It kind of has the Street Fighter aesthetics to it. Like, what's happening here? And then you kind of see like some Street Fighter Easter eggs, and I'm like, what's happening? And then it's like Chun-Li and Ryu, and I'm like, what is this game? So I'm pretty excited for Street Fighter 6.
Chun-Li with the thighs.
Always.
But they've never looked so good and beefy. I mean, so realistic.
It
was the first time I saw Chun-Li, and I'm like, that's a woman right there. That's a woman who could kick your ass.
So yeah, this is one of the games that I wrote down, Brian, that I'm actually excited to see more about.
Okay, so
and maybe Christian and I will do some fighting in the future. We'll see.
I was going to say, if Christian dug in on the Mortal Kombat, I was like, there's only one way to settle this, and it's through a brutal fight between you right now. Did you guys have any other ones that you wanted to discuss in particular? Those are the ones that I had.
Tunic is coming to the PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5, right? And Christian shouted that out a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, it's great they're finally getting it. It has been on Game Pass. I think it's good that that's on more platforms. You can play it on pretty much everything else besides mobile, I think. But that game is an excellent game that I highly recommend. So it's cool that it's going there. A couple ones that I want to mention. So there is a Dead Space remake. I know neither of you ever played the Dead Space series, but being a fan of the horror genre and survival horror games, they didn't have any word on the Dead Space update, but they did have an update on the Callisto Protocol, which looks terrifying and awesome, and it's basically just like a Dead Space and that seems very cool. After
that trailer, I was like, there's no way in hell I'm playing this game.
No way in hell. Yeah, it looked very exciting, kind of right up my alley, so I'm going to be very excited to play that. I loved all the VR stuff. They showed off a new No Man's Sky update, and you guys know I love that game, and they actually, you can see that we've heard the specs of the hardware, but PSVR still has not been like fully shown off. But in that gameplay, you see like two hands, and that's not how the PS1 VR is. It's much more a move controller in that space that you use to basically do the same functions. This actually had hands, and then it went to holding the joystick. And I'm like, that interaction seems so cool. So getting an update to that game just getting better and better. The Horizon VR thing, that might be a system seller akin to Half-Life in VR, Half-Life Alyx, which is super cool. So all that stuff is very appealing. There was the Walking Dead game, which I very much want to play. It is available for PSVR and the Quest 1 that I have, but I have held off on playing it. I'm like, I'm going to play it on a better platform because those two I don't think support that type of game super well, and I haven't heard great things on lower form hardware. So I'm very excited for new PSVR stuff, which is really cool. So
I think it's also worth noting, we haven't mentioned it yet, that Spider-Man Remastered is going to be coming to PC. And all the Spider-Man games have, up until this point, been PlayStation exclusive. So that's super exciting for PC gamers that don't own consoles. It's going to look great.
It's interesting.
PC.
They've been doing this trend of releasing more Sony games on PC, but it's like years after. I think God of War just went there, so Spider-Man took a bit longer, but I think it's great.
If you're going to make an exclusive game, I mean, I think that makes sense.
You got to milk it for a few years at least.
Yeah, I think it's cool that they finally, though, open it up. I think that's really exciting. Agreed. And it's always cool because as soon as they do that, you get all these great modding. The modding community just goes crazy, and you get all this cool stuff from that. So that's exciting.
It's going to be fun.
So yeah, that is PlayStation's State of Play. Anything else you guys wanted to bring up before we move into what's coming out this week?
Let's go into it.
All right. So starting off with some TV. We've talked about it a good deal as news has been coming out about it, but the Miss Marvel show coming to Disney Plus this Wednesday is finally out. So the premise of this show, we follow Kamala Khan, a fangirl of the Avengers, particularly Captain Marvel, who struggles to fit in until she gains her powers. This is going to be 6 episodes long, the first season. It's going to serve as a setup movie to the upcoming The Marvels for 2023. It is created by Bisha K. Ali, and they serve as head writer with Adil El Arbi and Bilal Fallah, who recently did Bad Boys for Life. They were the directing duo behind that one. And this stars Iman Vellani as Kamala Khan / Miss Marvel. We've talked a bunch about this. I know we're all probably going to be watching this show as we do with all the other Disney Plus shows. But Chris, I'm going to start with you. How are you feeling this close to Miss Marvel?
You might be surprised to hear this, but I'm not super hyped for Miss Marvel. I was, when the first trailer came out, I was like, oh, this is really interesting. But the more I've seen, the more I'm beginning to realize, like, I definitely think the show is skewed younger than most of the other Marvel content that we've gotten. I'm definitely gonna watch it, so I'll be able to give my opinion on it. But
I love a good Chris turnaround. So we'll see.
I'm not saying that I'm not going to love the show. I'm just saying that in terms of content that's coming out right now, it's not like on the top of my priority list. I'm mostly going to be watching it because I love Marvel. Obviously, listeners of the show know that I'm the Marvel fanboy here on the Pop-O-Holics podcast.
You like Marvel?
Marvel.
Yeah, you didn't know? You didn't?
Thought you were cash.
So yeah, I'm not super hyped about it, but I am going to be tuning in, obviously, to check it out.
Yeah, same. I really want this show to be good. It's interesting because I didn't know a lot about Miss Marvel until I played the Avengers game, and I'm on record saying that game is garbage, but I played a lot of it. He
loves it.
It's my garbage, okay? God, they need to update that again because I need to get my fix, and they haven't updated in a while. I might be dead. Anyway. The main story in the campaign of the Avengers that you guys know, right? Because I bought it for you for Christmas, so you've definitely played through the whole thing at this point.
We definitely know it.
Definitely played it.
Is basically Miss Marvel entering the Avengers, and I don't know if you can do a much better story than that. That was really cool. I didn't have any affection for her as a character, and that game made me like her as a character. So it's a pretty high bar to set as far as experience I had and what the potential of the character is, and it was a much bigger story than we're most likely going to get with this show. But I really hope it does well. I always feel bad for these shows from these big properties that focus a diverse character. I mean, in the comic, she's a young Indian woman, right? And she's played by a young Indian girl in this, or is she Arabic? Arabic. Okay. I'm almost certain she's Indian in the game, but she comes from Asia or the Middle East, right? So you have a female woman of color child, right? And that just like we've seen it with the Kenobi show that came out. It's rife for people to say like, it's an SJW big blockbuster, and like that's
here we go again with the MCU.
Yeah, and it's
bad faith biggest.
It's horrible.
It sucks that there's this extra pressure that I'm like, please don't be like the worst Marvel show because people will be like, it's because of this. And it's like, now the story just sucked, So I'm hoping that the dialogue around it stays mainly focused on that stuff instead of the other stuff. But of course, the internet. So I'm hoping it's really good. I really am.
I've heard good things so far. Yeah. From the critics that have been able to watch the first couple of episodes. I have heard that it's kind of like the Disney Channel show of the MCU, like a Lizzie McGuire era like, type of thing.
I think that's
what
totally
it should
fine.
be.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially for the demographic. You got a young teenage girl. Like it should be more like that for
Agreed.
newer audiences. So, I think that'll be great. I'll probably catch at least 1 or 2 episodes. I don't know if I'm gonna watch the whole thing because I did watch Lizzie McGuire back in the day, but
I was gonna say no lies. Lizzie McGuire was watched.
Total Gordo, total Gordo over here. Am I right?
Total Gordo.
Total Gordo. Yeah.
So yeah, that is Miss Marvel that is premiering on Disney Plus this Wednesday. Another 6-episode series that's premiering. We have Dark Winds. This is coming to AMC and AMC Plus this Sunday, the 12th. It's a psychological thriller that's created by Graham Rowland and based on a book series called Leaphorn and Chi by Tony Hillerman. It stars Zahn McClarnon and Kiowa Gordon. Zahn McClarnon recently was one of my favorite characters on Reservation Dogs. He's an actor that you may not know his name, but you'll definitely recognize him.
Was he in Hawkeye as well? Did he play Echo's father in Hawkeye?
I think he did. Yep. He was also in Hawkeye. Yeah. So
yeah, the Native American actor, right?
Yes,
yeah, he's great.
One. Jesus.
No,
he probably is one of the most famous Native American actors. Just putting it out there. I'm not sure there's a more famous.
To that point, the series follows two Navajo police officers, Joe Leaphorn and Jim Chi, in the 1970s Southwest. This looks kind of like in the vein of True Detective or something like that. Possibly like some grisly murder situation happening, maybe hints of supernatural things as well. Very much up my alley. This show looks great, and I've been hearing a lot of good buzz about it. Do you guys have any interest in Dark Winds? Six episodes, AMC, they're one of the better cable networks in terms of original content, I think. Is this something you might consider watching?
I don't have any means of watching it currently, but from the trailer, it looks really cool. Especially with, like you said, potential supernatural things going on as well. I love when these psychological thrillers can ride the line and like really make you question whether it's just terrible humans doing awful things or like there is actually maybe like some witchy stuff going on behind the scenes. But Christian, do you have a way to watch AMC original content currently?
I'd find a way. There's always a free trial around the corner. Sure. But yeah, Brian, you said 6 episodes. I was like, I'm interested. I like this.
Right.
I always like a 6-episode mini. And it's a mini series?
I believe so, because it's based on the book.
Ooh.
It just says television series.
We'll
not
see.
certain.
Maybe leave
Not
it
certain.
open. Either way,
Yeah.
6-episode season is very interesting. I'd be interested. I'm going to watch the reviews closely.
Yeah, definitely.
Keep an eagle eye on it.
So that's Dark Winds. That'll be on AMC and AMC Plus.
Those winds, they're so dark.
Blowing your way this Sunday. Doing the
Grade A dad jokes here from Brian on Pop-O-Holics.
So moving on, we have a new Netflix Adam Sandler movie, and when you hear
Thank God.
you are not expecting the movie that I am about to describe.
Like, come on.
Hubie Halloween.
Hubie Halloween. I
enjoyed it. It
I
was
will
fun.
die on the hill and say Hubie Halloween is good. And that one about the boat too, that wasn't bad. That wasn't bad.
I didn't watch the one about
It was like
the
a
boat.
murder mystery on a boat. I didn't watch all of it either. But
I actually have heard that's pretty
was it
good.
Murder Party or something?
who gives a shit?
Was
the
it
point
with
is,
Jennifer Aniston? I
yeah,
think
it was
in
Jennifer
as well?
Aniston is his wife, and he's got a mustache again, I think. Wait. Sandler has had 2 decent movies on Netflix, which has shocked the world.
But this is going to be more of a drama.
Yeah, so this is a sports drama directed by Jeremiah Zagar from a screenplay by Taylor Materne and Will Fetters. It stars Adam Sandler as well as Queen Latifah, Ben Foster, and Robert Duvall. The premise is a former basketball scout tries to revive his career by recruiting a player with a checkered past from overseas to play in the NBA. It's in limited release right now, as Netflix will do. It's not playing wide, but it'll be
For them
on
noms.
Netflix.
You got to get them noms.
Oh yeah, gotta get
Adam
get a little
Sandler in a
buzz.
drama, he's going to kill it.
I'm telling you, when he gives a shit about making a movie, it's usually pretty good. And the thing is, it's either that or he's on vacation. And he's just been on vacation a lot with his kids and brings a film crew. And they're like, oh, okay, we'll make what I'm going to do with that. Am I going to fight with the fish? Okay.
And I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but Adam Sandler fucking loves basketball. So, I mean, I don't think it's much of a stretch for him to play this particular character. So I have a feeling this movie's actually going to be great.
I think he has a problem with it. I mean, put his life on the line betting on some sports games. I saw this documentary.
Uncut Gems.
Called Uncut Jewish Man.
Oh, no. Oh, boy.
I think they're not Jewish at that point.
Brian, keep us moving.
Sorry.
I keep going to the doctor. He's scared. He's just sharp knives.
Oh, no.
I saw one of those happen in real time, and I got to tell you, it's fucking horrific. Anyway, let's get past this. Chris is gonna edit this out once the video posts.
I'll leave it in. It's fine.
Just like Adam Sandler in Uncut Jewish Man.
So that is Hustle. That'll be on Netflix this Wednesday, the 8th.
You gotta put skin in the game.
Fuck. We're just writing a parody movie of Hustle at this point.
Wow.
Brian, what else we got? Maybe
we'll be covering later this month. It is Jurassic June, as you'll know, and Jurassic World Dominion, the third in the sequels trilogy of Jurassic Park movies, is coming out this Friday. The premise of this: the future of mankind hangs in the balance as humans and dinosaurs coexist following the destruction of Isla Nublar.
Man, why is the future of mankind constantly hanging in the balance? Can we not get our shit together as a species?
It's a little wobbly.
Listen, I've seen the Jurassic Park and World movies. The island of dinosaurs couldn't have contained enough dinosaurs to impact the future of humanity.
But they're breeding, Christian. They're breeding.
Yeah, no. Oh, God. I'm going to be like Chris and Chippendales on this one. There's no universe where this is a good movie. This thing looks like...
I don't know. You and I are planning to go see it in 4DX.
Which I think is the only way that I'm going to have
It's going to elevate the experience.
I will
Brian, you're
it
absolutely invited as well. I don't want another Star Trek The Motion Picture
I gotta tell
situation happening. So
I have
here
not watched-
on air...
We are,
I'm
as
inviting you
Brian
as well.
mentioned, we're doing Jurassic June. We're watching all the Jurassic Park movies except for the one good one.
But we released a commentary track for it.
We've covered that base. And I love this series, and I remember I did not like Jurassic World. I saw it in theaters, and then when I saw Dominion in 4DX, I was like, I had fun. I have not watched the movie yet. That is one of our last reviews right before we will review Dominion later this month. And I think the only reason I liked it is because I was like, this is the stupidest way to watch a movie. This movie's not very good, but someone's spitting in my face and there's smoke and my chair is vibrating for some reason. So for that, I will enjoy the movie experience because I'll be with my best friend Chris and Brian. Best friends, maybe. We'll see. Invite still pending. But that is the only way I'm going to enjoy this movie. This movie is going to be I'm going to go on record and say this is going to be the worst one of this series. It looks like...
I mean, if the pattern continues, we've already identified that each copy of the original Jurassic Park gets shittier and more unclear. So
It's more like
by that
Terrace.
logic... But I will agree with you, Christian. I'm interested to watch Fallen Kingdom as well because I have the same opinion as you do right now. I really think the 4DX saved it. So you and I might come out of that new movie.
I do. It's fun to watch Hollywood burn to the ground with dinosaurs. I think that's a fun experience. I saw Top Gun Maverick, which I'm going to talk about in my quick hits. Very exciting stuff. Stay tuned for that. I saw a trailer for Dominion. I had not seen a full trailer for Dominion.
Oh.
And I was like, it's all the worst things about the way these new movies have been. It's going to be a hot piece of garbage, but it's going to make like $500 million. So it doesn't matter what I say. People are going to go see dinosaurs. We're going to go see it. We're doing an entire month dedicated to the release of this movie. I hate myself.
Look, Chris, as long as Thor Love and Thunder makes more money than this movie at the end of the summer, that's all I care about.
That's all I care about. That's where my money's at. I got a wager on this thing. Anyway... Brian, what else? Jurassic World Dominion. You're seeing it. We already know you're going to see it.
We're all seeing it. We're covering it. That's directed by Colin Trevorrow, co-written with Emily Carmichael, and has all the people from the previous series, some new people, and some classic characters might be popping up and returning in this as well. We're going to be covering it. So we'll see later in the month how we feel about this movie. Hopefully it's better than we're expecting.
Colin Trevorrow returning. He also directed Jurassic World. So he's responsible for 2/3 of this sequel trilogy.
It's like the...
And he also wrote the best Star Wars sequel script.
Yeah, it's the director that started the Messy trilogy coming back to finish the Messy trilogy. That's never gone bad. in
Never.
the history of.
Oh yeah, there's no.
There are
possible other
no
trilogy to
comparable
think about.
franchises.
What if, Chris, would this be the greatest movie ever if it's just the Duel of the Fates script, but instead of saying Luke Skywalker, they say Tyrannosaurus Rex?
Dinosaurs,
I think that would make it. That would definitely make it the worst Jurassic Park movie,
but still,
but
worthwhile
possibly
watch.
the best sequel Star Wars movie.
Alan Grant going like, that's the Kylo Renosaurus.
Bro, that in 4DX, this is gonna be fun as hell.
Worth it. Completely worth it. I agree.
So that's Jurassic World Dominion. Interestingly, they are. This is going to be on Peacock within 4 months of the theatrical release. Everyone's always kind of trying to find the new normal for post theatrical release. So I feel like this is nice. 4 months is a good break prior to coming to pseudo free on the Peacock service.
If we didn't have this podcast, I would wait until it was on like video on demand. I really would not see this unless this was, I can't even call it a job. We don't make fucking money on this thing. But if it wasn't a hobby podcast that we have, I would not see it. So that would be like, great. I will sign up for the free trial of Peacock to watch it. Anyway.
Ouch. Well, hopefully it's worthwhile, and we'll be talking about it later in the month. That's Jurassic World Dominion. That'll be in theaters this Friday, and that is it for the news this week. We're running a bit long tonight.
Brian,
Apologies.
thank you so much for that news. Let's go into the next section, which we do not have an animation for. Brian, we're waiting on that, which is Quick Hits. Quick Hits is that special part of the show where we talk about what we've been consuming and our thoughts quickly on them. And we're going to start off with, what everybody wants to hear us talk about, which is that new Obi-Wan Kenobi, that Ben Kenobi show on Disney Plus as of our recording and as of the release, I believe. Yeah, it'll be 3 episodes that are released, so this will line up. I have seen all 3. Chris, you have obviously seen all 3 probably twice, if not 3 times. And Brian, you've seen episode 3 now?
I have.
So we are all caught up on that series.
This is a rarity.
This is a rarity. I wanted to make sure I was a good pod boy. So I watched the Kenobis, and I got some
pod boy
thoughts. But we got to hear from the Star Wars boy himself. Chris, how much did you love Kenobi?
Gentlemen, as you may know,
Hello there.
Obi-Wan Kenobi was my most anticipated show of 2022. And oh boy, I'm just a happy Star Wars fan, because I think this show has delivered on everything that I've wanted it to deliver on. Let me list the creatives before I gush any more about it. All 6 episodes are being directed by Deborah Chow. The score is by Natalie Holt, same composer that composed the Loki series, which was also a fantastic score. And it stars Ewan McGregor, Joel Edgerton, Rupert Friend, Sung Kang of Fast and Furious fame, Moses Ingram, and Hayden Christensen, and of course many more that I don't want to list because I don't want to spoil anything about this particular show. All I wanted to see going into this show was Obi-Wan struggling with his relationship to the Force and how he is existing in a world that is being overrun by the Empire after having failed his religious order, having failed his brother/student. And boy, does this episode, or not this episode, but this series deliver on that so far. I think Ewan McGregor's doing an absolutely fantastic job, especially in the first episode. There's a ton of face acting from Ewan McGregor where you can just feel his pain and feel his frustration and anxiety. He at this point is kind of using his promise to look after Luke Skywalker on Tatooine as a crutch to keep him from facing what has happened and his failures and moving forward. And they're just doing a really great job in terms of illustrating that. I love seeing his relationship with Uncle Owen, Joel Edgerton. That dynamic is fantastic. And I have to say, I was aware of what was going on behind the scenes and some of the casting calls, but I was so pleasantly surprised with what the inciting incident for him having to leave Tatooine is for this series, and I don't want to say more than that, because if you haven't seen the first 3 episodes and you're a fan of Star Wars, I think some of you will enjoy it. As we know, Star Wars fans are a very toxic and fickle group, and as we've already seen, not everybody's loving the show.
Clearly not a new character that's introduced.
Right. But I'm just having an absolute blast with this show. Listeners of our show will know that I wasn't the biggest fan of the Book of Boba Fett, despite being a large fan of what little characterization Boba Fett had previously to that show. But I texted the boys after the first 2 episodes, and I was like, for the first time in a really long time, it just feels good to be a Star Wars fan. And it's strange to feel gratitude toward something that you like have no hand in, you know, or like a franchise that you've loved your entire life is finally giving you something that you are enjoying. And I know that's like the downside to Star Wars is that the fandom is never entirely happy with one particular project, and everything rubs the fandom in different ways. So while I'm enjoying something a whole lot, it also means that other people are just having horrible fucking tantrums about this particular thing on Twitter. So
The Empire Strikes Back. Everybody likes The Empire Strikes Back. They didn't like it when it debuted in theaters, and it was
They did not, no.
divisive, which is hilarious to think about. Something that was divisive is now agreed upon by the fans. Isn't life cyclical?
maybe we just need to give The Last Jedi like 3 decades and people will come around. We'll see.
Yeah.
Anyway,
We already know.
I'm thoroughly enjoying the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. How do you guys feel about it?
Brian?
I'm having a good time with this one as well. Yeah, I guess it makes sense to not talk about the kind of the trailers kind of led us to believe the show would be a certain thing, and it kind of pivots from that. Which I appreciate. Something that you touched on a little bit, Chris, that I really liked about Ewan McGregor's performance and what they're doing here. There was something in the sequel trilogy where Luke had all of this guilt for having trained Kylo Ren into the man that he became. And I feel like on the Luke side, we didn't get a huge exploration of that. And it's great to see that the man who trained Luke is kind of having a similar experience now, really struggling with his relationship with the Force and his hope generally, and seeing slowly him become reinvigorated and back to, thinking that it's worthwhile to maybe teach Jedi again after this horrible experience he had with Anakin is it's nice, and it's very enjoyable. I think there are some elements of this show that are take me out of the show levels of silly at times that I won't get into specifically. There's a chase
action.
sequence.
The action is straight up goofy. Most of
It is
anything.
it's the low point of the show, I will say that.
Unfortunately,
Yes.
yeah.
But the emotional stuff,
And all the performances
to that
are
point,
great.
though, Brian, and just to hit on the, what we were talking about, it's kind of got the goofiness of the original New Hope, because it wasn't until Empire that we got besides the model stuff, which was the high point of A New Hope, like the hand-to-hand combat, the blaster fighting. This is very original Star Wars looking. It's just comical after everything we've seen. But continue with the performances.
Yeah, no. Well, I just think all of the performances of characters we know and characters we don't are really great, and I like where the story's going so far, and it's kept me entertained. I think and it's kind of an action set piece at the end of episode 3 where we have some characters who get out of a situation completely inexplicably, and it's
Brian,
mind blowing.
Fire is scary. Fire is a very scary element.
The levels of non-forced hand waviness are ridiculous.
Non-forced. Interesting. Yes. We see the Force do lots of crazy things, and then we see it fail to be able to achieve something that seems very simple.
So, but even given all of that, I'm so excited to finish this. I think it's been a fun ride so far, even with the silliness.
and I have to say, I wasn't mentioning any of that stuff because I was afraid of diving too deep into specific things that are happening surrounding it. But I think you did a perfect job, and I agree with you. I just didn't want to mention it.
Yeah, the action's goofy as shit. I'm pleasantly surprised this show's better than I thought it would be. Because I think all the things you said, Chris, I think the crisis of faith that Obi-Wan is happening is cool. I love the plot direction as a whole. I love the characters we get. It is very similar to the part of the tension is very similar to the video game Jedi Fallen Order. I made a joke on the Villains podcast, which you're on, Chris, if you want like a super deep dive into Obi-Wan and your thoughts and that of the Villains cast. Check that out. But I called it Obi-Wan Fallen Order because it takes place in like the same time period. It involves I can say it involves the Inquisitors, right?
Absolutely. It actually, I think in the timeline, Fallen Order takes place a little before
interesting
Obi-Wan does.
Yeah, that
Survivor, the sequel, is going to be taking place around the same time.
That would make sense because the rank and file of the Inquisitors is different in this show. So that stuff I think is working incredibly well. Most everything else, set design, it feels like old school Star Wars, which is really cool, and it's an interesting way because they have to bridge the prequel to the original trilogy. So it's a tall task. I didn't know how they're gonna do it. I think they're doing it better than I thought they would do it. But the action straight up goofy shit. The third episode, I was like, this is just a bad episode in almost every way possible, except for maybe some of the character beats. But
I think both of you are so spot on though in terms of like choreography, and I don't want to mention
of course
who's in the scene.
Yeah, of course.
But it is very similar. It has a similar feel to the choreography in A New Hope.
Exactly, which is I don't know if that's intentional, but also just like the play, like this really important. Sorry, there's a fly. This really important set piece happens, and it happens in like it happens in what looks like a backlot of a dumpster, a landfill, and it looks like they just shot it in a landfill, and it's very like you got the swelling music. There's characters that are very important,
which is it's crazy to me because they're using the volume, they're using stagecraft, so like literally it could be anywhere.
Yeah.
They could have literally made it anywhere.
I think they lost their location. It looks like a day shoot of...
File corrupt.
I really don't have any other explanation for it because it is so poor. Like, because we've seen really cool stagecraft from The Mandalorian and all this other stuff. So I was kind of baffling how bad those aspects are. But I prefer that to be bad and the main story to be good rather than there be like top-notch action. So it is to be expected. There's a lot of money on screen. I do like we don't get a ton of lightsabers in yet at this point in part 3, but I really like that new lightsaber tech they're using for these shows.
Oh my God.
It's really cool because you get this such a much more natural glow than I think we've seen in any of the movies.
Yeah.
They really feel like props on the set, which is super cool. So for the technical department, that's good. And the robots look amazing and like all this other stuff. So there's a lot working in the show. I did have like an existential crisis of like, this is what we spend money. Like, did we really need to explore this? But Chris, you bring up some good points. And overall, I'm having a good time. I'm going to finish it. It's just some nitpicks and it's not a perfect show. But it is good to see. It is good to see this like bridge between it. And we'll talk more when the series ends, maybe in spoilers about some specific stuff.
I think it really is a good bridge, as you guys are talking about, because there are moments in episode 1 and episode 2 that very much feel like the prequels. As the series is moving forward, we are kind of leaning more into that A New Hope original trilogy-esque choreography like we were talking about. I will say that in episode 3, what transpires, I think, is more of an appetizer of things to come. I think we are preparing for a main course that I'm hoping is going to be way more visually interesting than what we have initially seen.
It takes place at a recycling facility.
Yeah, just a step up from a construction site.
It's going to be an insanely awesome training montage, though. There better be one, or else I'm canceling the show.
It's funny, though, that we mentioned, like, the set seems really weird, because there is, like, I don't remember if you remember what was that guy's name? There was, like, a group of people that kept making lightsaber fights on YouTube, like, early days of YouTube's what was his name? Dark Lord?
I don't remember.
There was this one guy, it was like a group of people, but like it was called Dark Lord versus something. And it was like they were in normal times, but they fought with lightsabers. And it was like a 20-minute YouTube video of choreographed lightsaber fights. And it's like better stuff than they've done in any of the movies, because that's all they did would make like this 20-minute basically Hong Kong hand-to-hand action set piece. And one of them takes place in this really like dull factory looking place, and it's like the coolest thing ever. So it's not even just location, it's an execution of choreography. I think that you guys had mentioned.
before we move on, a couple of very silly nitpicks. I need more swipe transitions in this show. There are no swipe transitions, and I feel like that kind of makes Star Wars to me. You know, it gives it that like Star Wars-y vibe. I know it doesn't need to have them, but I think that would be fun. And two, watching the first episode of this show, and this goes back to a little bit of what we were talking about earlier, it blows my mind how people can be so accepting of Obi-Wan going through this like depression, and yet they cannot accept Luke doing it. And after seeing that, it's almost the exact same emotional journey. And it just frustrates me. It makes me frustrated at the Star Wars fandom that for some reason it's easier to acknowledge and accept that, oh yeah, this is definitely something that like Obi-Wan, one of like the heroes of the Clone Wars, like this master Jedi, yeah, this is something that he would go through. But like, oh no, our precious fucking Luke Skywalker from the original trilogy is not allowed to be grumpy in his older age because he's seen some shit. You know,
I think it goes to the perception of potentiality and what already exists. Like we're introduced as Obi-Wan as an old man, right? So like you see him as a frail old man. He's dispensed of very quickly within the first movie, like halfway through it, you know, and so anything else is leading up to our knowledge of him as an old man who had lived a long life, as opposed to Luke, we meet bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, right? And he kind of sets that tone. So I think that's
in hand.
I think that's probably the real reason why it's harder to accept that kind of thing. But I
get it, but it's frustrating.
Fully agree. Oh yeah, no, all the Jedi Masters are crazy old bastards when they're older. It's like when you go too hardcore on a sauce. Listen, when you go too hardcore on any
used to
sauce,
have a code.
yeah, you end up great. Qui-Gon Jinn was like, let's take this abandoned boy that I feel the darkness super inside him. We're gonna train him, okay? Crazy man who like let himself die. Yoda's like a gremlin in a fucking swamp going like, you know,
it's a facade.
Yeah, but he's a little nutso, right? And I agree with you, but let's not. We've trotted down that path, and it's probably why our listenership has tanked. Probably.
Fellow Pop-O-Holics, email us at popholicscast@gmail.com to tell us how wrong we are.
No, I'm just kidding. Why would you do that to Luke? Luke is the symbol of hope. He's a perfect Jedi. He would never have any faults. Don't fuck with my heroes. Anyway, that is Obi-Wan Kenobi, which is streaming on Disney Plus. And it's called Obi-Wan. It's not, Obi-Wan Kenobi. I was like always confused if it was just Kenobi, which was probably
also. Usually I'm more perceptive when it comes to this stuff, but the eye at the end of Kenobi is his lightsaber. Genius logo design. So
Very
cool.
Nice.
It is pretty cool. Okay, I'm going to move on to something I saw. Guys, I finally did it. I saw Top Gun Maverick in IMAX. I saw it right before my fiance got
Lucky
COVID.
Man.
And that is the way to see it. You only have a week left probably until it's out of most of your IMAX screens, loyal listeners, because Jurassic Park Dominion is coming in. So I urge you completely, if you are at all interested in some of the most breathtaking cinematography involving fighter jets, you will get no more experience. I saw it on a 70-foot IMAX screen. And I have to say, real briefly, my thoughts on this aren't complicated. The movie itself is not very good. As far as a movie and story, it's very traditional, cheesy 80s kind of action movie. There are some heartfelt moments. Most of them are meta-contextual to the movie. Most of them have to do with our love of actors and what Tom Cruise kind of stands for as an actor and as a filmmaker of sorts. He did not direct it, but anything that you hear about Tom Cruise is like he kind of directs the movies. It's a very big...
He is a producer on it, though, isn't he?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, he's a producer. This movie itself, actually, in the first act, had me a little worried. I'd seen a lot of preview footage from it. I actually saw like a 5-minute scene before seeing Doctor Strange, and that's in the front part of the movie. But I will say, like, I was halfway through the movie going like, I think this movie was overhyped. Like, it really has that feeling of, it's like the love story is kind of, ugh. You've got Jennifer Connelly, which I'm always for. I mean, that's a saving grace, is that you're just looking at Jennifer Connelly, who looks incredible still, which is amazing. But other than that, you're looking at Tom Cruise being weird Tom Cruise. And I think he's relatively good. But the story itself, I think if you're a big fan of Top Gun, I do think it's going to work really well. And I do think it's important that you have seen Top Gun to get any emotional parts of it. It's not the strength of this movie. The back third of this movie, and I want to say like the last 45 minutes to an hour, is some of the most exhilarating stuff I've ever seen filmed in my entire life. And that is not hyperbole. What they capture is absolutely insane. And as it kind of gets really goofy, and Chris, I know that you had mentioned to me, the ending I've heard is just like the trench run in Star Wars. And it's a very similar mission they're prepping for. But then the movie actually kind of doubles down, gets a little crazier. It's completely absurd, but oh my God, is it worth it? And especially, I think it does both things. I think as an audience member, no matter what, you're going to be very excited as Top Gun fans. It does fan service in a really fun way for fans of Top Gun. And it's absolutely, I don't have the words to describe. I have not been this way in a theater in a very long time. It is structured very much like a heist movie, where it is a group of individuals that don't get along. They're making a plan. They have to do things. They have to execute the mission. Mission goes wrong, etc. It's very simple, and I don't think it's the best plot character development version of that. But again, the last hour is, I was literally on the edge of my seats. Everybody in the theater moved up and was like throughout the whole thing, because it's so crazy to see these actors in these jets. There's a shot of they do these the craziest maneuvers ever, and they look so dangerous. I'm surprised no one crashed and burned and died. There's a scene where you've got what's his name, the new kid that's in this movie,
Miles Teller.
Miles Teller. He's in a jet, and they go and do this crazy maneuver, and his strap was too loose, and his head knocks up against the top of it as he's doing it, and they thought it would be unusable, but they're like, this looks fucking great, let's put it in the movie. It's in the movie. There's moments when they're doing barrel rolls, and the actors actually like grip the side, and their hand is shaking. When they're doing these moves, you see their face jiggling in a way that you just can't get. And there's so many of these moments that they shoot, and they're like, we didn't plan to do that, but because we actually flew, a $100 million jet this fast at this thing. There's an opening scene that I'll spoil. It's in the trailers, where a jet flies over a shack. And when it does that, it rips the roof off the shack. And they were like, well, the set's broken, so we have to use that. They did not plan for that. It just happens because you flew a jet over.
Wow.
One of the most beautiful shots, it's in the trailer again, is you get Tom Cruise flying really low and then taking off, and the dust flies to the side and does this angle over the wings as it's and they're like, that's gorgeous. And no animator, no CG person would have ever thought to do that, because we just haven't seen it yet. And I don't know if we're ever going to get a movie like this again. It is a very special experience. Again, caveat, this is the last hour of this movie is some of the most incredible film things that have been shot ever. There is CG in it. They do quite a bit of CG towards the end, but it's the incorporation, right? You just don't. I actually was surprised to learn that one part was completely CG. I was like, I didn't even notice, because of something we'll talk about a lot as we go through the Jurassic Park movies, of when you have enough real stuff, you can cheat CG really well. Like, it can really trick the brain. And that's what we want to do. We want to be immersed. We want to be convinced. And this, dude, you gotta just go see it. I don't think you're gonna like the story very much. It's kind of.
I have to say,
but
you've kind of convinced me. Like, I'm not gonna go all the way to IMAX to see it, but I mean, having the theater 10 minutes from my house, like I could literally go like tomorrow night, and check it out. I wasn't planning on going, but I'm convinced.
It's incredible. It's literally the best hour of a movie I've seen in a while. Like pure action set piece kind of thing. It's really great. You will laugh at some of the dialogue. My brother compared it to Team America World Police. I think it's
wow.
I think it has a really healthy amount of like duty and patriotism without being very specific about the enemy or what they're doing, or really harping on it too much. Like, it has just enough to be a rah-rah America movie, but it's not like, I don't think it's down your throat, but it is a bunch of like people broing out and being like, well, we're doing it for the country, It is like that. But I've seen movies that hammer on it way too much, and I honestly don't think it's that big of it. For them having used Navy assets, it could have been a lot worse. But the dialogue is pretty atrocious. But there are a couple surprising moments. There are, I will say,
you keep wavering back and forth between because
it is not a great movie structurally, but there, I will say there are some, because it's so bad and your expectations just nosedive right into the ground halfway through the movie about what the potential of feeling very much for character stuff is. There are some surprising stuff towards the end that, like, again, the back hour, chef's kiss, amazing. Brian, you're going to see this movie, right?
Oh, I am definitely going to see this, and I got to find an IMAX screening that's hopefully not ridiculously packed prior to, like you said, Jurassic World coming out and starting to take some of those screens. So I will hopefully be seeing this prior to next week's recording.
Yeah, and again, that last hour, pretty much all in IMAX, which is so good. Like, most of the last hour is in IMAX. Again, aces. Ace Pilot. That is top. Oh, and there's that Top Gun Maverick Flight Simulator DLC and Top Gun Maverick Ace Combat DLC. And, I'm gonna be taking my flight stick for a joyride. It's gonna be very fun. But
is that innuendo?
Just wait till after the podcast, please.
Yeah, don't do it while we're recording.
I've arrived. All right, that is Top Gun Maverick. You know what? I'll hold this till next episode. I know, Chris, we both saw Inside the Outtakes, which is streaming on YouTube. You know what I'll say, listeners? Catch it. If you liked Inside, go check it out. It's a YouTube special. It's special for that format. It's like a mixture of bonus features and a new movie. It's very cool.
Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah.
Also, Inside Deluxe has been released on all streaming platforms if you want to just listen to the music. So
yeah, it's got a banger about making microwave popcorn. It's pretty interesting.
It does.
But we'll talk about that next week, if at all. But I think me and Chris both enjoyed it, so we can recommend it, especially if you're a fan of Inside.
Maybe I'll check it out before we can all three talk about it. Yeah,
that'd be great.
Absolutely. All right. Brian, you saw a new movie in theaters, Crimes of the Future. I know nothing about this movie, so I'm very excited to hear about it.
Is this the new Cronenberg flick?
It is.
You know what? I have heard a little bit about this. There was some marketing that had to do with like the history of Cronenberg. But please, Brian, proceed.
So yeah, this is the latest movie written and directed by David Cronenberg, classic horror director. This stars Viggo Mortensen, Léa Seydoux, and Kristen Stewart, as well as Don McKellar. And this is the type of movie that I feel like the less you know, the better. I think the trailer did a pretty good job of giving a sense of the vibes for the movie, but not really giving too much away about the plot. So I will say, I think there is all the classic body horror stuff you'd expect from Cronenberg here. It's very much tied in with sexuality to some degree. This is a movie about a indistinct number of years future where globally humans have started developing in response to how we've treated the world and how tech has developed and things like this. And because of this, people are acting differently and becoming interested in different things and finding maybe more extreme ways to entertain themselves. I'm really talking around the plot. I think this movie.
Are you telling me Cronenberg made a movie about like desensitization? Oh God, I'm gonna fuck up this word. Desensitization.
That's definitely an element of it. Yes, like people aren't feeling pain in the same way anymore.
For someone who like pushed the boundary on like the horrific things one could view visually, this movie.
What a twist!
It's very interesting. Take on it from someone who has impacted a certain element. I wouldn't say that probably is all encompassing to what the film sounds like it's about, but that is an interesting.
So yeah, I don't want to give too much away, but ultimately the conceit of the movie, the human body is changing, and there's an element of performance artists that are using the way that the human body is changing to perform.
Content creators? Am I getting the analogy to this movie? Sorry. Am I already
It's a very intense movie at times, but it can be a little bit slow. I wasn't bored by it personally, but I think there is a lot of great stuff here. You also have kind of a perspective on the government organizations and how they're reacting and responding to what's happening with humanity and how people are evolving and who is for and against that and the different kind of political agendas that are pushing up against these things. This movie is definitely not for everyone. It has stuff that will make you squirm, make you very uncomfortable, possibly aroused and disgusted simultaneously. Uh,
Some people pay extra money for that experience.
yes. But
Aroused
On-
and
on a-
disgusted,
on a,
you
like,
say, Brian.
Visual, because I've heard a lot about Titan and the other movie that newer director did. How does it compare from a visceral experience to those? Because those scare me. Like those are like I'm not sure I want to go down that route. Where would you put this? Is a little slower pace, a little more.
it's interesting. I feel like the movie is a lot less abstract in some ways than something like Titan. Raw is more straightforward, but I was squirming probably comparable amounts. It's very much Titan is just without getting too much into it. The concept behind it is much more abstract than this movie. This movie feels very visceral, and I'm avoiding saying one word, and I don't even know why, because if you've seen the trailer,
Human
you'll know
centipede.
this. But I'm just going to leave it there and say this movie is classic Cronenberg. It's got excellent performances throughout, and has a couple of twists and turns that relatively like first act stuff that is not revealed in the trailer that kind of makes the movie more interesting.
That's cool.
And makes our main characters and who we follow gives a perspective that I think kind of maybe blurs the lines between good and bad with what's happening here, or gives us perspective on the sides that are being taken in this new world.
Very cool. I'm very interested in this actually. And I gotta I know Cronenberg inspired design, like alien design and all that stuff, right? That was influenced by, no, that's Geiger. Excuse me. I'm
Giger.
Giger. God, on fire. Geiger's the
But he did, The Fly.
The Fly, yeah.
Classic.
Yeah. No, and I haven't seen a ton of his work, but I know that he's kind of like OG body horror stuff. So it's very cool, but I also feel like I have to do homework before I see it. But that is Crimes of the Future. Very exciting. That's quick hits. We have all those linked in the show notes if you want to check those out, where they're streaming or in theaters. Let's wrap things up real quickly with our community feedback section.
Welcome back to the community feedback section, fellow Pop-O-Holics. In this section, we take care of some housekeeping for the Pop-O-Holics. We typically go over our Throwback Thursday episode coming out on our YouTube channel. We'll talk about any poll results we have from any of our Twitter polls. And then, of course, we will read aloud any 5-star written reviews that you've left us on either Spotify or the Apple Podcast app. We're only going to talk about our Throwback Thursday episode today. This Thursday, if you go to youtube.com/Pop-O-Holics, if you're only listening to our beautiful, sensual voices right now, we have a YouTube channel, which you can see our horrifying faces as well. youtube.com/Pop-O-Holics. And every Thursday we release an episode from our back catalog. We're trying to give all of our YouTube watchers, as the boys put it, access to our older episodes. And this week we are releasing the second part to our Best of the Decade episode. We were very brave, and at the turn of the decade we decided to exclaim what we thought were the best pieces of content of the decade, despite our limited view of everything that had come out over the last decade. But it's a really fun conversation. In part 2, we're talking about what we think the best television show of the decade, the best movie of the decade, and I believe the best oh god, I always fuck up this last one. Definitely those two, possibly best album of the decade in this episode.
I think it would be books for
best book of the decade.
I thought it was best Adam Sandler movie.
That's a subcategory.
It was definitely Hubie Halloween.
Either way, it's a fun conversation. If you haven't already, last week we released part 1. That's a fun conversation as well. Gentlemen, do you have anything you want to add to our best of the decade episodes?
We all are growing constantly and learning about ourselves. It's funny, I was looking back at some of my choices, and admittedly, as I was listening, going through the time tags, I start off just as I did with my future pick for his album. I'm like, let me begin by qualifying this choice. So hopefully I gave enough context and perspective there. But it's interesting looking back and seeing how cringy you can be sometimes.
It's a fun exercise in content creation. Christian, do you have anything?
I was
you
probably
wanna add?
perfect. Yeah, I probably don't regret a thing. No, I
Sounds about
I don't
right.
even want to listen to the episode. That's how I feel like I don't. You should, listener, to go back in time. But yeah, no, I feel like I would probably change my mind. I was because we did our top. We I don't know if this is on the throwback, but it's definitely on the main podcast. Did our favorite films of all time, and
That'll be coming out.
Ooh, so stay tuned
we
for
did
that.
that for our to celebrate our 100th episode. I believe it is our 100th episode. Actually.
Okay. That I cringe at because I'm like I would have moved around a whole bunch of stuff at this step, but that's I think we make all those disclaimers.
You grow, your tastes change. People are complex.
Number one, Titan. Very cool. Chris, thank you so much. And we don't have a poll this week, right?
We do not.
Poll's coming later. Poll's coming
We will
later.
discuss
Subscribe to us on the Twitter feed. You can link to us on all of our social media by going to the link tree, which is in the show notes or in the YouTube notes section. Email us directly at popholicscast@gmail.com. We read every single email that we get. So we'd love to hear from you. What do you want us to cover? Your opinions. What are you consuming? And any reviews you have, we'd love to read it aloud. Rate us 5 stars on your favorite podcast player. And Chris, what are we covering all month?
Christian, it's Jurassic June. So on Wednesday, we're going to be talking about Jurassic Park 3. So exciting. And I also want to point out, for those that are unaware, last week we released our commentary track for the original Jurassic Park. So grab a bucket of popcorn, pop in your DVD of Jurassic Park.
Did.
And Christian ate up the popcorn while we were recording that commentary.
I listened to
track.
most of it in prep for Jurassic June, which we're covering this month. And at one point, I'm like, I'll be right back. And I'm like, I got a fruit pop. And I talk about fruit pops for like
I remember that. I do remember that. So if you want a mix of comedy and Jurassic Park knowledge, I think you're going to find a lot in our Jurassic Park.
At one
commentary.
point, I grab basically an Indiana Jones or Alan Grant hat. And we didn't do videos. I'm very confused at what that gag was. It's just for you guys. But we try to explain a visual gag I'm doing. It's
visual
good.
gags work really well in an audio medium.
No, we're always growing. We're always getting better.
Yep, always getting better.
Yeah. So again, email us at Pop-O-Holicscast@gmail.com. If you want us to do more commentaries, anything, just talk to us. We'd love to hear from you. That'll do it for this. Loyal watchers and listeners, again, let us know what you think of the show. We hope that you genuinely like it. Gentlemen, where can people find more of your work on the internet?
Loyal listeners and viewers, you can find me on Twitter at Chris Conkling, talking about all things nerdy, comic books, television, movies, video games, collectibles. If it's nerdy, I'm talking about it.
And you can find me on Twitter at True Pop-O-Holic.
And you can find me at my band at Midnight Satire, Augmented Reality EP, now streaming. Boys, we have a music video coming out that you guys helped me make. It's coming out soon. When? I don't know.
Brian and I are in it.
You're in it, which is why I'm trying to clear it past legal right now, because they said your faces are too beautiful to put online.
Of course.
In that way.
Which is so strange because
we're doing this right
video
now.
goes out every week.
It does make money. I should get new lawyers. There are a couple of uncut Hebrew men. All right, that'll do it for this episode of